Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Sustainable Urban Innovation Conclave, organized by APAC News Network in association with MMRDA and with support from Bank of Maharashtra. So we had a very fruitful inaugural session in the morning, represented by a lot of senior bureaucrats from Maharashtra and Central Ministry, as well as senior dignitaries from Norway and Brazil, who talked about global best practices in urban innovation that can be replicated even across Indian cities. We also had a very interesting panel discussion where some of these best practices were discussed and deliberated. And So we have an audience of 200 plus who is watching this program, and I'm sure some of the innovations and best practices that are talked about, they can go back to their respective departments and organizations and look at replicating some of those practices here. So now we have a session, and we welcome Mr. B. Sundar, IFS Special Secretary, Department of IT ENC, Government of Andhra Pradesh, to talk about good governance for effective urban governance. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Mr. B. Sundar. Over to you, sir.
Thank you once again, APAC Network, for giving the opportunity to articulate about good governance practices in the urban milieu with a reference to e-government. That is how my understanding of the subject is when the subject was given to me by APAC. uh, from the government perspective, our e-government initiatives and our e-government services span both rural and urban areas. And in my experience as officer in the IT department, I see that it is much more cost efficient and process efficient to offer e-government services to the urban urban sector as compared to delivery of services in the rural sector. The reasons being fairly quite obvious. Like for delivering e-governance services, you need expensive IT infrastructure in the form of towers, in the form of internet bandwidth, in the form of speed. Okay, these three crucial factors, and then a certain amount of digital literacy amongst the population. All that, all these items get right ticked in the urban milieu. Whereas we do have a lot of challenges when it comes to delivery of these services in the rural milieu. But since APAC network has requested me to restrict my discourse only to the urban milieu, I will uh, I will emphasize some 3 to 4 considerations which led to best practices from the e-government perspective in the state of Andhra Pradesh. The first I have already said in an indirect reference, which is the cost of delivering e-government practices and e-government services to the urban sector. When we talk about urban population, it is extremely gratifying to note that Andhra Pradesh is one of the very few states, just like our neighboring states down south and many of the states in the northern parts of our country, where citizens are fairly quite digital literate. So that led us to move from a uh, service model where we have a person appointed by the government either through a franchisee or through a private sector service provider to unmanned kiosks. We did experiment with unmanned kiosks in the urban areas for some time, and it was a reasonable success. But the cost of the infrastructure was quite so high that it was not amenable for replication. So maybe if the infrastructure cost comes down, the possibility for delivering more service. Now, what are the services I am talking about? That is one question for the that may be haunting the audience. The services are very basic, which are required for a reasonably good living, like booking of gas cylinders, payment of insurance premiums, booking of motor vehicle slots, all services related to revenue and land records like encumbrance certificate and procurement and procurement of not procurement, the educational related services like the student desires to have a look at his or her mark sheet, take a printout. I mean, all these are, some of them are seasonal services and some of them are not. So whichever way you look at it, it is quite uh, cost efficient for us to deliver these services in the urban sector. Now we progressed from stage to stage by adding on more and more e-government services in the urban milieu. What started as basic services like payment of utility bills, booking of gas cylinders, as I said, payment of insurance premiums, booking train and airway related services. We've graduated from these to much more niche services like job portals for the uh, just just graduated students, easy payment of EMIs for those who had taken consumer durables on debt. Okay, these were some of the niche services also which we were able to look at and deliver in several of our kiosks in the urban center. All that, of course, was possible on a basic internet bandwidth of 20 Mbps. And our vision going forward is not only to enlarge the bouquet of these kind of services, but also to make these kiosks a one-man stop for the farmers, because we have plenty of rich and upcoming farmers who operate from the semi-urban and the township areas in our state. So for these farmers, we have planned to offer them a one-stop shop in the form of Raitu Bharosa Kendras, where the farmer will not only be able to have access to information related to agriculture services in the form of what uh, what is the best time to plant a particular species, what are the various temperate species available for planting in hot tropical zones, what is the protocol to be followed, what are the helps and resources one can expect online from institutions like the Indian Agriculture Research Institute and so on and so forth. Besides these basic agriculture related services, we are also offering them a pipeline of vendors who sell fertilizers, who sell various other agricultural implements, and for the farmers too, they should be able to easily avail subsidies and bank loans from those banks that specialize in these areas. So these are called Raitu Bharosa Kendras in our, and we have started with and experimented with it. It has been quite a good success. But the challenge again is taking it to the rural milieu where internet bandwidth itself is a big question. So that itself is a different challenge, which I won't talk much about right now. The next part of enlarging the bouquet in e-government for the urban population is to start a host of digital libraries. Okay. Now, why suddenly the concept of digital libraries? Now, it is a fairly well-known fact that students uh, and reasonable literates, they do not require hordes of libraries. They don't need to visit top tier premium expensive institutions for addition and increasing their certification capabilities. You give them a small powerful internet line and a monitor to understand and observe various phenomena, and you give a huge push to capacity building for the population. So this was the thinking, and it we started it in a small pilot basis in our capital, in a semi-urban locality. We put in 4 terminals, and we supported it with a good internet bandwidth, UPS, a nice air conditioned facility for 4 to 5 people to sit because all this came in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, where we saw that there was a need for such kind of a facilities in semi-urban areas when many people who were asked to work from home were from metro cities like Bangalore, Hyderabad, and Chennai. So they all came to small towns here, which is their native places, and they were wanting such facilities. So in this laptop or desktop, which is a i3 machine, you have a host of, we loaded them with a host of downloadable free software, which helped the worker or which helped the students to do their lab and work practices here. For example, we had a good antivirus package, we had a good Word, Excel, PowerPoint. We also had a free software for Word, Excel, and PowerPoint manipulations through the Open Apache project. We had a project scheduler from Project Libre, which helps one develop Gantt charts for projects. For students who are, the new education policy talks about coding classes for children as young as from the sixth standard. So that means there is going to be a huge demand for students from semi-urban and rural areas for resources in computing. So we found out that the language, which the programming language which they used was Python. They also experimented and had chapters on basic facilities and basic functionalities in databases like SQL and MongoDB, which are all free open source databases. So without much expenses, we downloaded the software, openly available software. We also found that for the top five most loved programming languages in the IT world today, like ranging from C, Python, C++, Java, and R, we were able to, it was, all it required was some time and some knowledge. And some of these resources require password management also, because for SQL and PostgreSQL, you require master passwords and passwords which has to be managed within the machine. Now, if it is one machine in the home, it's fine. But when I'm talking about 15,000 machines across the semi-urban and township areas of the state, it becomes a challenge. And we found that the students flocked to these institutions because we kept it open 24 by 7. And after there, they wanted to practice their lab, they wanted to do some programming. Yes, the machine was available with the entire IDE, that is the integrated development environment for Python, for R, for C, for Java. They could code, they could participate in machine language and artificial intelligence competitions through Kaggle. So we provided them with all the necessary facilities. We also subscribed to very expensive IT and electronic magazines so that all these things were available at one spot. For the adults, we had a, not only, of course, they do surf the web for entertainment, YouTube, all that's fine. But we also gave them access to the Swayam website of the Ministry of HRD, where 32 courses across 16 disciplines or the YouTube videos are available for free. And once you are registered, you can learn them at your own pace. So this was the fillip we are planning to give for the digital libraries. We started with one. By this year end, we hope to have all these packages in 2000 odd Sachivalayams across the state. And by the end of next year, we plan to completely roll out these digital libraries in 15,000 locations. The third and final aspect of good practices in e-government in urban innovation areas is in the area of work from home, work from hometown, because in the heights of pandemic, the work from home paradigm was a big game changer, and we have contacted the local engineering colleges, and we have developed the facilities from the ITC department's perspective, where we have a dedicated terminal with all the facilities which I'm talking about, and a good internet bandwidth with some of them you will have VPN capabilities. So in every district, We have shortlisted 3 to 4 colleges, and each college offers these work from home cubicles on a cost basis, that is 2,500 to 3,000 rupees per month per seat. So that the employers can use these resources for relocating their employees from urban cities to these kind of metros. We started the project last week. We are getting a good traction in the form of good demand for these kind of facilities in our state. But we are yet to finalize and come up with a full scale analysis of which sectors are actually asking for it, whether it is completely the BPO sector or whether it is some sector in the knowledge processing area. So these are some of the insights which we will derive after having a thorough analysis of the work from home portal which we recently opened. So thanks once again for giving me these opportunities to summarize. I have I have conveyed 3 to 4 important points. One is the cost factor, which is very small for delivering e-government services in the urban milieu as compared to the rural one. The second is our small experiment with unmanned kiosk, which can be a big game changer in urban e-government. And we the third is the Raitu Bharosa Kendras, where we hope to deliver a one-stop shop for the small, big, and also the marginal farmers of the semi-urban areas. And finally, the digital libraries concept, which goes a long way in capacity building, with a small nudge from the government side. So with this, we hope to improve our digital literacy rankings, not only within our state, but also in our country, and also the celebrated United Nations e-government survey. Thank you. Thank you once again for giving me this opportunity. If there are any questions, I can take now or later offline.
Thank you. Some of the questions would be coming offline and we'll share with you over mail. Thanks, Sundarji, for that perspective. And that's sort of gives us and encourages us more in that urban innovation mission, which all the stakeholders in different central and state governments are planning. With that session, we come to a conclusion of the Sustainable Urban Innovation Conclave, which was organized in association with MMRDA with support from Bank of Maharashtra. So thanks to Sundarji and thanks to for all the attendees, more than 300 plus attendees who watched the whole proceedings today. And I am sure some of the best practices which people learned today, they might be able to replicate them in their departments and organizations subsequently. With that, thanking all the audience and thanking Sundarji once more, wishing everyone a good day. We come to a close of the Sustainable Urban Innovation Conclave Maharashtra. Thank you.